Hey guys, welcome back to Project Bodybuilding. This is basically part 2 of my Europa Pro recap. I didn't want to discuss this topic in my actual recap video because I felt this topic deserved its own video with more time and focus. Of course, that topic being the results of the Europa Pro Top 2. If you haven't heard by now, Regan Grimes prevailed over Nathan Asha and won this show. Keep in mind, the weekend before Europa at the Flex Pro weekend, Nathan won with a perfect score. There's also a little bit of controversy that maybe they gave Regan this win in order to get him to the Olympia because Nathan was already qualified. On the surface, you can begin to see why this is questionable. Furthermore, I put out a poll on my community tab asking you guys who you had winning this show, and it turns out we're pretty split. Personally, I was on the side of believing that Nathan should have won this show, but the best way to settle this debate is just to go pose by pose and see what we can see. We have a lot to get into. This one I really want to pick apart, so let's go ahead and jump into the comparison. If you guys like these types of videos, go ahead and hit the like button and subscribe for more comparisons. In the front double, I think both guys bring pretty good poses. I just can't deny Nathan the pose though. It's really coming down to one word, and that word being development. And with that, the overall quality Nathan has in his physique. Nathan is a seasoned veteran, you can just tell in every pose, and this one is no different. Nathan beats Regan in just every standalone body part. But Regan is keeping this fairly close because he has a very good structure. But like I said, Nathan is winning the arms, the chest, the abs. The waist is probably not his because of his bigger obliques, but then he cleans up when we go to the lower body by winning the legs easily. Every one of those body parts is more developed on Nathan's physique. He has more muscle maturity and he just looks dense and stacked. He's looking more like a bodybuilder. Not to mention Nathan is harder, drier, and overall more conditioned, and that is contributing to the level of quality Nathan is bringing. Regan has a good pose, but Nathan is stacked, and yeah, Regan's structure may be slightly better. That's a big maybe, but Nathan wins every other area easily and keeps it close enough in the structure department. Overall, and I'll reiterate this here in the first pose so I don't have to keep repeating myself over and over throughout the comparison, Nathan looks more like a bodybuilder. You can tell he spent more time in the oven. That's what I mean when I say he looks more developed. He has more muscle pound for pound, and his muscle is thicker and more dense. And that's what I mean when I say he has more muscle maturity. These qualities won't win him every pose, but just keep those sentiments in mind as we go through the poses. Nathan is just more polished, looks more like a bodybuilder, and it's just more quality. As for this pose, the level of quality muscle, winning every body part including the arms, which is important for this shot, all of those things win Nathan this pose. Going to the front lat spread, this is a much stronger pose for Regan. He cuts a nice outline because he's very aesthetic. I still have to give it to Nathan. Again, it's coming down to the development. The legs are thicker and more separated on Nathan. The chest and shoulders are more dense and thicker on Nathan. And for the actual taper, both guys have good elements. Nathan has less taper but more overall lat width. This is coming down to his high lats. And Regan is the opposite. He has the better taper but less overall lat width. I personally still prefer Nathan's lats in this shot, and really with him winning every other aspect of the pose, I don't think it's going to be too controversial that I'm giving him the second front shot. The side chest is not a close pose. I see this as a clear Nathan win. The side poses are just going to be better for Nathan. He's the more muscular bodybuilder and he has that 3D look and is as full as a house. This all translates to a much bigger, much fuller set of pecs and the thicker looking physique from the side. Regan's pecs are alright, but they just don't jut out like Nathan's pecs. Nor do they have the detail of Nathan's. And even though Regan's the bigger man, Nathan is looking more thick from the side in that shoulder to shoulder aspect. And the side leg, for what it's worth, is also Nathan. His side leg is complete, and with better conditioning, he has the superior separation between glute, ham, and quad. So really, there's not a single area in this pose that Nathan is not winning. This is a decisive win for Nathan. Turning these guys around, we have a surprising victory for Regan. And I say surprising because of the margin he's winning the pose by. Regan has always had a good back, but I think this is the best it's ever looked. He really carved up heavily for this show, and I do think it translated the best to his back. Regan's back has every good element that we look for. He's got the width, and that just comes down to being the bigger man, but he's really filling out the pose. He's got the thickness too. Nathan is pretty close in this regard, perhaps even beating Regan, because Nathan has more muscle maturity and he just looks harder, and again, he's a little bit more conditioned so he can see the details in the back. But for being a young guy and in worse condition, Regan's back looks pretty dense. It's also defined. Maybe not the most defined, but definitely defined enough. We've got clear separation with traps, rhomboids, rear delts, and all those upper back muscles. Even going down to the lower back, not only is it just flat out better than Nathan's, but he's very dry and tight there. Again, I think Nathan may be overall more conditioned throughout the back, and I do think the lighting is hiding some of that, but Regan just does so well in every category for a better overall package throughout the back. back. Nathan's high lats are very distracting here. And personally, I just don't think it's a good look. I think it helps him in the front lat spread surprisingly, but I just don't think it helps him here. Nathan's conditioning is good, his back is thick, his erectors are defined, but Regan has the overall better back. Not only is Regan winning in the back department, but he even more decisively wins the lower body. He has more quad sweep from this angle, and his hamstrings are much better than Nathan's. The biggest nail in the coffin for Nathan in the lower body department is the lack of adductors. Regan's hams and adductors fill in that gap between his legs, and Nathan's hams and adductors aren't as good as Regan's to begin with, but the wide stance posing he's using is just adding insult to injury. The glutes are the only area Nathan is winning in the lower body, which is because he's more conditioned. As I said earlier, Regan played the size game with his peak, and it really helped him everywhere, but Nathan does have better conditioning as we've seen. But this isn't a shredded glute contest, and one body part can certainly not make up all the ground Nathan has lost. Nathan has good elements in the shot, but head to toe, Regan has every element we look for in a great back double biceps pose and wins this shot handedly. For the back lat spread, it's basically the same story as the back double. Regan's the bigger man and he fills out his back well, which gives him the most important aspect for the rear lat spread, the width. I do think the density and thickness category are clearly going to Nathan at this point. Nathan's traps and erectors just have more meat on them, and we can really see that more in this pose. He's more conditioned as well and has the thinner skin in the back, but Regan still has a good level of thickness. His traps aren't half bad, and even though Nathan is more conditioned, Regan's lower back is somewhat tight. He has a couple of skin folds, sure, but this is still very good and very sharp by today's standards. And once again, in the lower body, it's clearly Regan's game there. His lower body with the thick hamstrings and adductors is honestly more impressive than his upper body, even with his tremendous back. With all of that said, with Regan handedly winning the lower body and winning with the width department, there's no way Nathan could win this pose. So Regan sweeps both back poses. The side tricep is actually a closer pose than the other side pose to side chest. Nathan still has his strengths, he has the bubbly roundness which presents well from the side. He still looks bigger and thicker and is winning in the side leg because of his detail. The tricep is also good, but the thing is, so is Regan's. The two areas I like on Regan are actually the tricep and the midsection. Regan's got some good tricep mass. It's not as defined as Nathan's, but he's got some meat there. And his midsection is also better than Nathan's. Nathan's midsection is not bad in the slightest, it's just the way he's posing it. He doesn't have the detail of Regan. Regan is crunching down and keeping his abs glued to the spine, which is what his coach Milos always says. But can those two areas win him the pose? I gotta say no. Even though Nathan's tricep is a little less thick, I don't necessarily think it's worse. I can definitely go back and forth on whether I like a bigger tricep on Regan or the more carved out tricep of Nathan. What I really like about Nathan though is how thick the rest of the arm is with the superior detail. His delt and bicep are just bursting full and have some great detail, especially with all the delt striations. And the pecs are also Nathan's for the same reason in the side chest, bigger, fuller, and more detail. In my opinion, the midsection on Regan is a better argument than the tricep for him winning the pose, but Nathan is not outright sporting a bubble gut, so I still prefer everything else on Nathan. And really, I overall have to give him the pose. The abs and thighs is been Regan's bread and butter. Regan has a great lat to waist taper, I like his clean leg separation, and of course his abs are some of the best in the world in my opinion. He's got some great serratus and oblique detail, and the abs themselves are the good type of blocky and have deep separation between them. Nathan has the worst taper, and that's coming down to his obliques. If those were sucked in more, he would have a much better taper, but genetically he's always had those big obliques, so I don't think that's something we're going to see change. Nathan's abs are also just clearly weaker than Regan's. They're smaller and they don't have that thick blockiness that Regan's have, and the separation between Nathan's abs are much more shallow. Now going down to Nathan's legs, I think they present alright. I always like to see some nice feathering, but I'd rather see him pose his legs differently. His legs are so rounded, he has so much sweep, I think it would be worth it for him to pose them with the same stance he was using in the first two front shots, but that's just my opinion. I think it'd really look nice because again, he has that sweep and he has that separation, and he doesn't have to sacrifice any of it to show off the feathering. But the feathering does show off how much more conditioned he was than Regan. But all in all, I do like Regan's legs more here, surprisingly. I prefer his separation here with some better sweeps than Nathan trying to show off the striations. I prefer Regan's separation here, and with the way he's posing, they appear to have more sweep than Nathan, who is trying to show off those striations. So with wins in both the abs and thigh categories, Regan earns another pose. I think we probably could have seen this one coming, but this pose rewards the most muscular individuals, and like I've said throughout the entire comparison, the most muscular individual is Nathan. I really do like Regan's most muscular pose though, but you can just tell in any variation he does, while he may look aesthetic and has nice abs and so forth, he just isn't the most muscular guy, nor is he the most detailed. And that's exactly the case here. Nathan is a better bodybuilder, and that's mainly because of what? All the muscle he carries. Not to mention he has some other good qualities for this pose. He has much more detail than Regan for one, but as I've also mentioned before, Nathan has a round look. He looks 3D. Regan filled out a lot for the show, but sometimes his muscles can look flat, and for what it's worth, they definitely still look flat compared to someone like Nathan. Regan has never had the bubbly muscle bellies like Nathan. Nathan has it all. The round look, more detail, and at the same time, and most importantly, more muscle. Now, I will be honest, I don't think Nathan looks too good from this angle, and we all know how pictures can easily distort the truth, so here's another angle from one of the larger callouts. Look at Nathan over there, look how freaky he looks. If you saw this in person between Regan and Nathan, I'm absolutely certain that we would all be picking Nathan. And that's what I'm going to do here to round out this comparison. The final score of this comparison is 5-3 poses in Nathan's favor. Nathan won the front shots, the side shots, and the most muscular. That's just how I saw it. Admittedly, through stage photography, I wasn't there, but the odds are neither were you. So here are my final thoughts. Regan has the more aesthetic physique. I don't think anyone is going to argue that. He is the epitome of mass with class. And firstly though, Nathan is the better bodybuilder. And for what it's worth, Nathan's aesthetics aren't that bad whatsoever. In fact, he has very, very good lines. So Nathan has some solid aesthetics and outperformed Regan in every other category. Nathan was easily more conditioned and more muscular. So at the end of the day, if the aesthetics were close, with Regan winning in that category, but Nathan excelled in the other two categories, it's very hard to see why Regan still won. Regan was the most aesthetic guy on the stage, but hands down the best bodybuilder, the one with the most muscle, the one with the better conditioning, and the one with pretty good aesthetics himself, was Nathan. Nathan was more complete too, and had the least amount of flaws. He just had a look of seasoned quality to his physique. You can tell that he's been in the bodybuilding game for a while, and Regan did look less dense and looked more like a young gun. Nothing wrong with that, it is what it is. So for me personally, after this comparison, to answer the question I posed at the beginning, yes, I believe Nathan Asha was robbed and should have won this show. I'm not trying to detract from Logan's win, after all he had nothing to do with the results, but as for the judges, I would really like to know their real reasons why Regan was awarded this win over Nathan. I saw Nathan as the clear winner here. He had more of those qualities we look for in open bodybuilding. Those are just my thoughts. Of course, let me know how you saw this comparison down in the comments. If you guys like these comparisons and want to see more, go ahead and like this video and subscribe so that way you don't miss one when I upload. That's going to do it from me for this video. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.